Well, welcome everyone who's joining the stream. Looks like we're about to get rolling here with Collin versus Patrick for the Nugget Bridge Major. This is top 64. The ones can play Firestorm and have their dreams stay alive of making a lot of money playing Pokemon, which is always fun. And I'm joined by someone way more famous than me, Aaron, Cybertron, Zheng. Aaron, want to say hi to everyone?
What's up, guys?
I'm sure 3/4 of the stream already knows him, but you know. And I don't know, looks like we're going to get rolling pretty soon here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this match. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. So maybe we should talk about the players a little bit, since I think we were kind of selected because we both know the other guy a little better. So why don't you talk about Patrick for a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I think he's one of those players that all the players, especially over here in the Northeast, know very well. He goes to a lot of tournaments. You know, has had an up and down season in terms of championship points, but it's definitely still in contention for that Worlds invite. You know, top 16 finish over at Philadelphia earlier in the season. A bunch of championship points picked up from Premier Challenges as well. But it looks like we're actually going to get started with game one right away.
Cool, and it looks like Collin's going to be using a team of Gardevoir, Scavalier, Kingdra, Scrafty, Politoed, and Flindrus. And I want to say Patrick's team?
Yep, Patrick is running Charizard Y, Thundurus, Amoonguss, Sylveon, Swampert, and Dragolag. Or I don't even know how you pronounce that one. I have not seen that one.
Who knows? So Collin uses something relatively standard, I guess, with a little twist of using a Scavalier, but looks like Patrick's really going in here. He's really he wants to hit some stuff really hard.
Definitely. I think it's also really interesting because we're probably going to be seeing a mirror, I mean not a mirror, but a rain versus sun matchup here, which always makes things a bit fun. And then you also got the two Thundurus on both teams, so perhaps some swagger or Thunder Waves coming out on both ends.
Yeah, this might turn into a bit of a messy one, especially if we have like any like Rain Dance, Polyturd or something like that. The thing with
definitely
is that whoever wins the Weather War like really wins it hard, especially in like the Rain versus Sun matchup. Because I mean that's just a world of difference. If your Charizard's getting hit by a Rain boosted Scald or a Sun negated Scald, I mean that's you know the difference between life and death for Charizard, so to speak. So I mean this is gonna be a volatile matchup. I don't even know what Dragalge does. I only kind of know what Swampert does. So who knows what's going to happen? This is going to be a bit of a slobber knocker, would be my guess.
I agree, definitely, and we're actually going to get started right away here. Now, Collin, you know, given that he's running a Scavalier on his team, it would make a lot of sense for that Gardevoir actually to be carrying Trick Room, so I would not be surprised to see if he had that, especially with the Scrafty on his end. You know, he probably has a bunch of different ways to play this, but it looks like we're going to see the Scrafty and Thundurus lead here for Collin. And we do see the... I don't even know how we're going to pronounce that one.
I think we should just change it every time. So we're going to see the Dragalgiggly, the Dalgiggly and the Amoonguss lead from Patrick versus the Scrafty and the Thundurus. Hard to say what's the advantage here.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to what Patrick's, let's see, Dragolg, I'll call it Dragalog.
All right.
Or Dragalgi is going to be doing here. I mean, Amoonguss here obviously can redirect an attack immediately with Rage Powder, or it can also go for a Spore, but Collin having that fake out pressure and taunt / Thunder Wave / Swagger if he has that on Thundurus. But it'll really come down to what the Dragalga is going to do here right away.
And what it's going to do right away is switch into Sylveon, which is perhaps the metagame choice, and Amoonguss is just going to protect, so it looks like Patrick's going to try to maneuver his way out of a sticky lead matchup here. We're going to see Collin go for fake out onto the Amoonguss and a Psychic.
Wow!
From Thundurus. Oh boy.
Huh.
Oh boy. So that's going to do pretty much nothing. So it seems that we might be looking at a offensive Thundurus, maybe not the sport one that we're used to. So maybe Taunt, Thunder Wave, Swagger, maybe he has none of these.
Very good point there. Now, we didn't see a Life Orb come out of that Thundurus. That's like he did do a fair amount, though. Maybe Choice Specs, maybe something like Expert Belt as well. But yeah, definitely probably a more offensive Thundurus than we're normally used to seeing, since Psychic, not exactly the most common move there on a Thundurus.
Yeah, gonna have to agree there. Scratchy's gonna swap out, afraid of that Hyper Voice, that Moonblast, that Hyper Beam, any number of things. Moon's gonna Rage Powder because he loves being Psychic. That's his favorite activity in the world. Genie Sadrian is going to oblige him, but what? Is that a Resist Berry?
I guess it is.
Oh, it's a Papaya. I didn't know what that was called. So I know that now. And Hyper Voice from the Sylveon. So maybe these guys know each other's teams a little bit, seems like.
What an interesting turn there. I mean, we Saw the light board coming out of Sylveon as well. Not exactly the most common item. Often you see choice specs or even pixie plate, but light board makes a lot of sense here. Obviously you do take the 10% recoil, but you get a bit more damage output there. Thundurus also didn't have that citrus berry, so you know, looking like, yep, it is going to be one of the more offensive Thundurus, though, you know, still around at 25%, but that was a really smart Escavalier switch in for Collin there. He really was put into a bad position. I think Patrick played turn 1 really, really perfectly by switching in Sylveon for free.
Right, with that overcoat, Escavalier has nothing to fear with the Amoonguss. Thundurus might, so it's going to switch out in a Golden Girl, who is the Gardevoir. We're going to see it trace the Regenerator from Amoonguss. Would that help it if it's... I'm not sure what order that would apply in.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it's probably going to Mega Evolve before anything else, but could make some interesting situations. But wow, I'm really liking Patrick's turn here. What a fantastic switch in. Yeah,
unless this is a Hidden Power Rock Escavalier, we'll see. I was just going to Iron Head Charizard for a little bit of damage. Yeah, it seems like all bets are off this game. I don't really know what's going to happen. So Iron Head to the Charizard for negligible damage. It looks like Collin's trying to set up a little bit of a Trick Room mode, but we'll see if this Gardevoir could perhaps even... I mean, it gets a chance to set up Trick Room, because it could get Spored before it gets to set up Trick Room, or even a Sun-boosted Overheat. I don't know, maybe with the roll, that might be able to knock it out. Depends on how much bulk this Gardevoir has.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really great point there. Charizard coming in for free here is really good, though. I feel like Patrick's been playing one step ahead of Collin for the majority of this game, but Collin can completely turn this around, especially if he goes for a Trick Room on Gardevoir. But the interesting about Gardevoir is Mega Gardevoir, which is actually seeing a lot of usage, especially over in Japan. I know Ray Rizzo was testing it out lately as well. You know, it's actually pretty speedy when you Mega Evolve, but the thing is, with Trick Room, you can still catch opponents off guard.
Right now, Alberto Gini top cut Italian regionals with that.
Yep.
And Amoonguss is going to switch out back into and Escavalier is also going to switch out, fearing the Sun-boosted Heat Wave, Overheat, Flamethrower, Fire Pledge. Who knows? Scrafty's going to come in, get off and Intimidate, which might affect Dragalge and might not, because I don't know what Dragalge does, but it will not affect Charizard, I hope. Charizard's going to get Intimidated and Mega Evolve into Charizard Y. I think a good choice by Patrick, if I'm being honest. That's how I like my Charizards, nice and flying typing with Drought. So we'll see that Drought activate. But we'll see if Collin maybe has Polydome back to negate that later. The Gardevoir is also going to Mega Evolve, so we'll see if maybe it takes this turn to launch off a big Scream for some Fairy-type Pixelate damage, or if maybe it's going to set up Trick Room. Charizard is going to use Overheat.
Wow. Let's see. Is that enough to knock it out, though? Oh!
Golden Girl barely hangs on.
Oh, no, it got the KO.
Wow, okay. Yeah, no more Golden Girl. So Collin loses Mega just like that, and suddenly he's in a bit of a pickle, for being honest.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I feel like Patrick has literally been one step ahead just this entire time, and that was a huge knockout there. Not sure what Collin was going for. Perhaps he might have just targeted the Amoonguss with a Psychic. Regardless, Charizard able to just pick up a knockout there, and, you know, I think the reason why Patrick's been doing so well so far in this game is his ability to really just get himself into an advantageous position. I think Charizard, Y, and Sylveon are incredibly important in this match because of their abilities to just, you know, put on so much offensive pressure with spread attacks. And, you know, Patrick was able to bring that Sylveon in against a Scrafty and Thundurus. That's like one of the best times you could have a Sylveon in. And then he brought a Charizard out against an Escavalier. Escavalier not really going to want to stay in that position. So I feel like one reason why Patrick's just been one step ahead is because of these Pokemon with really powerful spread attacks, he's able to just switch them in safely.
Yeah, it's a really excellent point. Like, I mean, he's pretty much screen peeking over Wi-Fi is how I feel. If I'm looking at this, he's really making pretty much the best play he can make every single turn. Speaking of great plays, he's going to switch that Dragalge out into Sylveon, and Charizard's going to protect itself from a Volt Switch from Thundurus, and Sylveon's going to eat that knockoff, so no more Life Orb, but it's not going to take too much damage thanks to its Fairy typing. So I feel as though that might be a choice spec Thundurus would be my guess. If it's using Volt Switch, I think we commonly associate that with choice items on Thundurus. So now we know it might be locked into Volt Switch, which, you know, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you just have to be aware of that if you're Patrick. Maybe you could try to catch the switch.
Definitely, that's a great point. It's also interesting because we've seen Volt Switch and we've also seen Psychic, so presumably his last two attacks are something like Thunderbolt or HPI. So I think this is really, really good knowledge for Patrick here, knowing that Thundurus probably doesn't carry Taunt. You know, is it going to be an offensive one, but because of its offense, of course, is less bulky, probably can be 2-hit KO'd, as we saw how much that first Hyper Voice did. Now, it is a bit interesting of a position that Collin's in. You know, you can choose the Volt Switch one of the two, and you probably outspeed both, but Patrick not really going to take any risks.
Yeah, Patrick's going to switch out the Charizard, doesn't want it to get Volt Switch, he's going to switch in blah, 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 blah. He's going to use its Dragon typing, perhaps, to resist this Volt Switch, but instead he's going to Volt Switch the Sylveon, pretty sneaky. He's going to knock it out. So he's going to switch into his last build, which I'm not sure if we've seen actually from Collin. And Scrappy's going to get a free turn to do whatever he wants. Presumably a knockoff would be my expectation. We're going to see
that Escavalier coming back.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Escavalier's going to come back. And Scrappy, is going to knock off. And we're going to see what item this Dragalge has. I don't know what it could be.
Oh, it's specs.
Jeez. Okay. Which I guess makes sense because of the adaptability. Draco Meteor's going to be doing a big chunk to a lot of stuff.
Now, that was a really good turn by Collin there. That was probably as perfectly as he could have played it. And if you're Patrick on that last turn, you probably want to consider just going for the Heat Wave and the Hyper Voice, knowing that the Thunderous presumably is locked into Choice Specs, Volt Switch. That way, the Volt Switch knocks out one of your 2 Pokemon, but then you pick up a knockout, either Heat Wave onto the Escavalier or Hyper Voice onto the Scrafty. So I think if Patrick wanted to come out of that last turn positive and trade, he could have went for it, but instead he decided he wanted to conserve that Charizard. It does put him in a bit of an awkward position here. I think the Scrafty here is actually really good for Collin. Scrafty really likes to use Assault Vest, and it might be difficult to take it out, but let's see. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're going to see Scrafty knock off the moves for very little damage.
HP Fire!
Jeez. Whoa.
Wow. That was such a clutch turn there for Patrick.
I don't even understand what's happening, actually, to be honest. This is like, if I didn't know any better, this would be like 1350 on PS, like people just using like random things.
Yeah.
That's what I feel right now as I'm watching this.
I mean, that's amazing, though. That couldn't have asked for a better turn there on Patrick's end, given that he not only got the Spore off, Amoonguss didn't take too much damage. Now all he has to do is go for a Rage Powder, knock out that Thunderous, and then it's going to be a 3-on-1 in which Amoonguss can't really do too much. So I am sure Collin was not expecting that HP Fire, and that's really, really important knowledge for him going into the future games.
Yeah, it seems like both of these trainers are acquiring they're using all of their tricks game one. They're doing everything they can to get this early advantage. But we're going to see Amoonguss Rage Powdering because he loves getting Psychic. That's his favorite thing in the world. And he's going to go down to that Psychic. Banjo Iron's going to stay asleep. And we're going to see Dragalge go for the Sludge Bomb to knock out that Thunderous. And now it is just a sleeping Scrafty against the world. And I don't like its odds.
That was quite interesting there, though. I mean, now it is, of course, a sleeping Scrafty. It could wake up this next turn, so if it has an Assault Vest, maybe it could pull something out if it's running something like Rock Slide or Stone Edge to knock out the Charizard. Probably not, but, it's never over until it's actually over. Regardless, though, I mean, good last turn. That definitely confirms the Choice Specs onto the Thunderous, though, given that the Psychic actually picked up the KO on Amoonguss, so I think Patrick probably able to deduce this at that point, and this is very good information, and Collin's actually just going to call it quits here.
Yeah, and you have to respect that in a best of 3. Sometimes it's best to just forfeit when you think you're not going to win because you want to preserve some information and not let your opponent know some of your more obscure sets and movesets. And speaking of that, maybe let's recap here and discuss what we've learned so far. So, Patrick's using a Choice Specs Dragal and a, what's it, Pyapa Berry? Pyapa Berry moves?
Pyapa Berry, yep.
I've never even seen it before. I haven't seen it since I played singles. And Collin's using I guess nothing too crazy. A Choice Specs Thunderous with Psychic. I guess that's pretty insane. But, yeah, going back to the preview, we're going to see Collin's team again, which is Gardevoir, Escavalier, Kingdra, Scrafty, Politoed, Thunderous, and Patrick's team, once more just for the viewers, is Charizard Y, Thunderous, Amoonguss, Sylveon, Swampert, and Dragalge. So, if you're Collin, Aaron, what do you do in this scenario when you see Patrick, who seems to be prepared for you? What adaptations do you make to pull out a game 2 and set yourself up to win a game 3?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think there were a bunch of issues for Collin in that first game. First of all, he allowed Patrick to get way too many free switch-ins. For example, I think the protect/switch-out play is a really safe one on Patrick's end, especially when you're carrying Amoonguss, and especially with that Pyapa Berry, Collin can actually knock him out with, for example, Psychic, normally the attack you probably want to be using, but here, I mean, Mega Gardevoir, Psychic probably actually not knocking out Amoonguss, so it could be, I think it's just really clever for the Amoonguss to actually have Pyapa Berry here, and I think if you are Collin, you really want to avoid taking too much damage from these spread attacks. You don't want to put yourself in a position where Sylveon or Charizard Y gets a free switch in, but I don't know. Question is, do you really want to bring that Escavalier? Because we saw in that last game, it was really just knocked out immediately by Dragalge, and Charizard Y obviously walls it a considerable amount as well, and I don't know if Collin was trying to go for the Trick Room there in the first game. We didn't see whether he had it or not, but but perhaps you might want to go for a Trick Room setup here. But just looking at the team matchup, like I think dealing with Charizard Y can be quite difficult, which is kind of funny because Collin is running Rain, but if you're clever enough with the Charizard Y, you know, you can get drought up when you wanted to.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think if you're Collin T, you can't let Patrick make, I mean, I don't want to say predictable switches, but I mean, sometimes you have to make some aggressive plays to maybe make him feel less comfortable making those switches, because with an aggressive team like Collins, you really need to get some hits because your team is, like, I mean, a little frailer than most. So you really need to make sure you're maximizing those turns. If you have that favorable situation, you need to make sure you're getting something out of it. So
that's a fantastic point. And it looks like both players really changing some things up here. Makes a lot of sense, I think, on both ends. So Collin deciding, I'm going to bring the Gardevoir here and pair it up with the Thundurus, because in the first game, I think the Amoonguss just caused a lot of issue for Collin. So Collin decided, you know what, I'm going to try to knock it out before anything else, which was a smart adjustment on his end. Patrick, on the other hand, deciding, I'm just going to go with the two Pokemon that gave my opponent the most trouble in Charizard Y and Sylveon. But this is pretty interesting now, because that Thundurus, of course, is able to outspeed that Charizard, presumably, and can just knock it out immediately with a Thunderbolt, maybe even a Volt Switch, given that it's specs. So, you know, we do have quite a dicey situation here. Hyper Voice from Sylveon won't knock out either, but it'll do a lot of damage, obviously, when you're doing non-resisted Hyper Voice from Sylveon. And maybe Collin acknowledges that it could also just double target into the Sylveon, but we saw that Overheat in Game 1 was able to just knock out the Gardevoir. So, you know, Collin here might want to predict whether Charizard's going to protect or not, and Patrick, on Patrick's end, maybe he'll attack, maybe he'll protect, maybe he'll switch out. I mean, obviously, those are his options, but he's really got to consider which one he wants to do, since he doesn't really want to lose one of his offensive threats immediately.
Right, and Collin has done a wonderful job of setting up this pretty great leaf form. Now we have to make sure that he capitalizes, because if you don't capitalize, then you just can't win a game like that. So we're going to see what he gets out of the situation. It seems like none of them are going to switch out. And it also seemed like the Gardevoir outspeeds the Charizard. I'm not sure if that was revealed. Oh, no, it's not making
Yeah, Charizard's going to go for the Protect here. Now, let's see if Collin goes for the double into... Oh, wow.
Volt switches the wrong slot and gets off a nice Hyper Voice, which I'm sure will do a good chunk to Sylveon, but Sylveon's going to respond with a Hyper Beam.
Whoa! Get out!
Is it 1998 and a Hyper Beam that Gardevoir? It is going to go down really quick.
Now, I mean, that makes sense now. I'm guessing that... the reason why he aggressively targeted that Gardevoir is because he's going to want to switch out into Amoonguss, because Patrick knows how good Amoonguss is in this matchup. So, I mean, that was quite the interesting first turn there, especially because now the Sylveon is rendered useless, and given that Charizard protected last turn, Collin can make a pretty safe play here by doubling up into Charizard. You know, you can go for like a Volt Switch and an Iron Head while Sylveon's rendered useless, and at this point, you know, I mean, it's going to come down to what Collin's last one is. He could, of course, just pick up a free knockout onto Sylveon here as well, as he goes for a Volt Switch onto Charizard. I'm guessing, though, that Patrick's going to have that Amoonguss in the back, but the fact that Collin brought in a Escavalier once again and now does not have a way to set up Trick Room means that Dragalge can just go for a Hidden Power and knock it out immediately. So I think if you're Patrick, you're feeling all right about that first turn.
Yeah, I mean, you know, your Sylveon's immobile, but you have to think about what you traded for that, and I think the exchange is pretty good. That Gardevoir was pretty much Collin's only way out of this. I want to say pretty sticky matchup. But we're going to see Dragalge switch into that Volt Switch, and Thundurus is going to swap out, and we're going to see which one of two Pokemon Collin brought in the back that he wants to switch into this Dragalge and Sylveon. The Politoed comes in. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Politoed's going to swap in, especially because the Charizard is not Mega Evolved, so when if the Charizard were to switch next turn, it wouldn't activate the Drought immediately. It would take a turn. Sylveon can't move, of course, and we're going to see the Iron Head on the Sylveon while it can't move, and that is going to make the Sylveon go down. So Collin actually had the option there to maybe do a safe play and double up on the Charizard slot, but he actually opts to take the Sylveon. What do you think about that play, Aaron? I mean, I think if you're Collin, you have to... Oh, I don't know. What do you have to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, I like that. It's like he's already behind at this point, so picking up a knockout for free is great, but I think if you're Patrick here, you actually probably are pretty excited. You get a free switch into either Amoonguss or Charizard. He's going to be bringing Amoonguss here, which is an interesting decision. I think Charizard would have been a nice switch in here to Mega Evolve. You could put on some more pressure, but makes sense here. Now, the thing is, with the Rain, I'm wondering if HP Fire can actually knock out that Escavalier. My best bet is no, but I'm not entirely sure on my Dragalge calcs. Regardless, though, I think that last turn was a good one on Collin. I mean, it was the safest play possible. Like, there's no better time to not pick a KO on Sylveon when it literally can't do anything. So it made a lot of sense there, and I really liked it. And, you know, at that point, Collin didn't have any options. It's either you Volt Switch the Charizard, and that makes the most sense, and double into it, or you just pick up the safe KO into Sylveon.
The Moose is going to Rage Powder here to take a Scald, but I wonder if Patrick's forgetting about Overcoat on a Scavalier, so Rage Powder is not going to work on it. Let's see what the Scavalier goes for here. Dragalge is going to Sludge Bomb the Politoed. That's going to do, pretty good trunk. Then we're going to see the Drill Run on the Dragalge, see?
How much does it do? Oh, wow. Wow.
I think you might have forgotten about Overcoat. I was about to mention that.
Yeah, no, that was a really, really great point by you. And that's, I don't know, I think Charizard would just have been a better switch-in for Patrick because you get the ability to have Amoonguss, to switch in the back. And I think, like, an Amoonguss plus Charizard combination would have been able to seal this game up for sure. But now, Patrick's actually not in the best of positions because the Politoed can now switch out into Thundurus, which, of course, Thundurus would take some damage. And this is still a really close game. But the thing is, if Collin wants to, he can try to reset the weather with Politoed. However, the main issue for Collin right now is Heat Wave just does a lot of damage. Actually, what Patrick could do is also just go for a Heat Wave and a Spore onto the Politoed slot, which, if I were him, I would probably do. Just because you can put the Specs Thundurus to his sleep, and then you can't really do anything. And then he can just rely on redirecting attacks away from Amoonguss. So, I mean, I think Patrick's still in a really good position here. It's just a bit more interesting because Collin has that ability to reset the weather. But good turn from Collin that last turn. But I think this Charizard Y is going to be really, really difficult to take care of for Collin's side just because he doesn't have a great way to knock it out.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, so Collin has the ability here to reset the weather if he wants, completely free. Nothing's going to stop him. The issue is, I'm not sure if he wants to take that, exchange, because his Thunder is going to go down. I think his Thunder is going to be very critical in the turns to come. So really not in a great position. Even though he might win the Weather War, what it would take to win that Weather War might not be worth it, in other words. So
he makes a fantastic play here, though. I think that was actually probably his best way out of this. He's going to switch out the Scavalier into Thundurus. So what this allows him to do is, I am guessing Patrick went for the Spore onto Politoed. That makes the most sense. Or maybe a redirect attack. But by doing this, now he can go for a Volt Switch in consequent turns, and that would, reset the weather. Politoed does go for the Protect. So yeah, I think that was the best play for Collin here. So we're probably going to just see a Heat Wave Spore.
Right, I think we are going to see the Heat Wave Spore. Yeah, very sneaky by Collin, because what this sets him up for is he can switch out the Politoed into a Scavalier, and then Volt Switch.
So much damage, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah, that was honestly an expert play by Collin. I wasn't even thinking of that option. Because of Volt Switch, he has the ability to reset the weather with priority next turn.
Yep.
The issue is that if Patrick chooses to protect the right Pokemon, he might be able to stop that, and with the other, he might be able to Heat Wave or Spore to disrupt that strategy. So
yeah,
Collin has to be sure that he picks the right target to Volt Switch here. An option I'm considering is, maybe if you're Collin, you might even Volt Switch here on a Scavalier. I'm not sure how much the Scavalier is helping him in this game against this Charizard.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I guess we'll see. Gonna be interesting here. I mean, of course, Thundurus can still go for a Psychic. Maybe Politoed has Helping Hand with that Payapa Berry, though. Not sure, but this is gonna come down to the wire. I really feel like if Patrick just switched in Charizard over the Amoonguss earlier on, he would have this game more comfortably.
Yeah.
But like you said, I'm not sure if he realized that the Overcoat was redirected away. I'm guessing he didn't because otherwise it would make more sense because you'd feel a lot more comfortable in the position he was in. Knock out the Politoed, get a free switch into Charizard, then just redirect attacks away and go for Heat Waves. But now Collin does get a pretty free opportunity. Not too free. I mean, he's obviously going to be taking damage regardless, but it is going to come down to the wire. And like you said, if Patrick can predict who the Thundurus is going to be Volt Switching, he can potentially just knock out, but we're going to see the Politoed just switch out here.
Right, and as we expected, he's going to switch out the Politoed into the Scavalier, and I suspect he's going to go for Volt Switch. Moose is going to Rage Powder, very cleverly aware of that, and he's not going to let Charizard get Volt Switched, so we're going to see the Volt Switch onto the Amoonguss. Not quite sure who he's targeting. Moose is going to take Pittance from that, and Thundurus is going to go right back to Politoed to set up Rain for the remainder of the battle. I don't think we're going to see more than 5 turns in this battle. So pretty much the rest of the game is going to be defined by Rain, which is going to hurt Charizard, but I think Charizard still might be able to secure some knockouts on a Scavalier even with that Rain, just because of that dual weakness. We're going to have to see my Charizard and Rain calcs against the Scavalier. Not my expertise.
Oh, wow.
Scavalier sneaks around that Heat Wave, takes nothing. Politoed takes, figuratively nothing. Scavalier literally nothing. And we're going to see leftovers recovery on Politoed.
Yeah, that was a pretty unfortunate miss. Well, I mean, it's a bit interesting now because you know, he doesn't get a free switch into Thunderous, but the thing is he'll probably be able to get free damage onto Amoonguss. And the thing is, if Heatwave were to connect, you know, and it were to knock out the Escavalier, then the following turn, Psychic probably wouldn't even be able to knock out Amoonguss. You'd be able to get a turn of redirection. And I don't know, I think if you're Collin, you're probably feeling pretty good at this point, especially with that miss, because with each turn, you're getting a chance to just get back into the game. Obviously, Thunderous is at very low HP. It can still definitely be anyone's game at this point, I think. They really have to make the right moves. For example, one turn where if you, let's say Patrick decides I'm not going to Rage Powder, and Collin expertly targets the Charizard with a water type attack and just end the game immediately, since Charizard is the main way to win this one, especially given that the Heat Wave didn't connect there, which is unfortunate because Amoonguss has no way to touch that Escavalier.
Ooh, we're going to see a pretty risky play from Patrick here. He's going to protect his Charizard, and Politoed.
Oh!
Very, very sneaky by Collin. It's going to do a good amount. I think Amoonguss hangs on.
Oh!
But still, he's surviving with just a little HP. He's going to Giga Drain the Politoed. Not quite get the knockout, but he's going to get a little health back himself. Let's see if this Escavalier targets.
We're going to see a double target into it. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
That was truly unreal by Collin.
Wow. That's going to be game, I think.
Yeah, that's game, certainly. If you're Collin, you just sit around here, you wait for one of your Pokemon to get killed, then you switch in Thunderous, you click the Thunderbolt button, and you laugh. And we are going to see, it looks like Patrick might just forfeit here to avoid that situation.
Yeah,
wow.
expert turn there for Collin. I think he had to really go for that play if he wanted a chance. I mean, at that point when you're that behind, you have to make big reads. I really, really feel like Patrick should have had this game, but I don't know. Personally, I'm still looking back, and I think the Charizard Y switching would have just made so much more sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because, you know, the ability, even a Politoed in Rain, I mean, a Politoed in Sun cannot do very much to a Charizard. Like, you can Scald, but that doesn't do more than maybe like 30%. So it forces to switch out into a Thunderous, and we saw how frail that Thunderous is, and, you know, 2 attacks from anything could have knocked it out. So, I don't know. I mean, like, I think if you're Patrick here, you probably don't want to go on tilt. I feel like he was doing everything right until that last turn, but also probably a bit disappointing on his end. You know, he went for that Hyper Beam KO immediately, and it worked out perfectly. So I feel like the game was playing the way he wanted it to, especially after that first turn, but now he's going to have to rethink things. And, you know, Collin being such a good player in Best of 3, you know, one of the world's best players, and especially proving himself at Worlds last year, he is probably one of the best players to adjust in a Best of 3 situation. You know, I actually played him for the Regions tournament this past, just a couple days ago, and he, like, lost game 1, and then he, like, did completely different things game 2 and 3 and took it. So, you know, I'm very excited to see how he adjusts, because we saw him make that his adjustment in game 2, and like that end game was basically executed brilliantly. He had to make the perfect plays every turn, but he basically did.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree there. I mean, if you're Patrick, you have to understand that you won game 1 handily, and you won game 2 until, like, you've won 1.5 games, basically, and you have to not get frazzled, you have to press your advantage, you have to use the fact that your team, I would have to say, is a pretty advantageous matchup against Collin's team, and you really have to push it, and you have to make sure that you're applying the pressure, you have to make sure you're using the things that give your team that good matchup, and you have to not get frazzled, you have to not get worried, you have to not get nervous, and you have to not get scared. If you start playing scared, especially against a player like Collin, he's going to start smelling blood in the water, and he's just going to start pushing your buttons, and that's game over. So you have to not lose your composure, and you have to keep doing what made you successful already, with just a few more refined, couple of turns that just turned out to be really critical. So you have to not get your head down, you have to keep playing. So
all said, I really like that. And I think you'll be, I mean, wow, the fact that Collin was able to actually come out of that one with a win was really impressive as well. Like, even though I think Patrick kind of messed up by bringing in the Amoonguss, he was still ahead, right? And basically, Collin figured out the one way he could win. I think there were 2 really, really big turns there, protecting Politoed and switching out to Thunderous, then the last turn there where he went for the read and targeted the Amoonguss with both of his Pokemon. Like, if he messed up either of those 2 plays, I think Patrick would have comfortably won that. Not comfortably, but would have been able to take that one. But, you know, Collin figuring out his win condition and playing it to its outs, and it worked out perfectly. So I think that's a testament to how strong of a player he is.
Yeah, I mean, and, like, he really, truly had, like, 0.5 ways out of that scenario, and it was he had to do those 3 moves precisely that way, and they all had to kind of work out. And for him just to see that, I mean, if you're looking at your guess, you know, you have 4 moves with each Pokemon, right? And you could switch to either 2. So for you to click the right one of those 3 turns in a row, that's, I mean, you know, that's incredible. That's really incredible. Collin is going to lead the same thing that he led game 2 with the Gardevoir Thunderous, and we're going to see a slight adjustment from Patrick, who's going to lead Charizard Amoonguss, which I think is a good adjustment just to keep Charizard alive, so it can stick around longer and heat wave some stuff, overheat some stuff perhaps.
So this is a pretty interesting start right away. I mean, we saw the switch out from Sylveon. I think that's all right here. you know, Mungus obviously being able to redirect attacks immediately is really great, but Collin here might opt to double target it immediately, for example, with a double Psychic. But of course, the Charizard is able to outspeed Gardevoir, so a potential move that Collin could make, or Patrick, excuse me, is Rage Powder and Overheating. However, Collin decided in Game 2 to bring the Politoed, which he did not bring Game 1. He opted to replace, of course, that Scrafty. So if Collin does have the Rain in the back here, you know, that actually makes Patrick's job a bit more difficult, because should he Mega Evolve this first turn and set up the Sun, then Collin in the consequent turns can actually switch out into Politoed and set up the Rain. So I don't know, we've got a pretty interesting situation right away, and I think if you're Collin, you might feel a bit better just because, at least if you have Politoed in the back, which I'm guessing he does.
Right. And I mean, so it's kind of weird about Charizard is whenever you're fighting a Rain team, even though Drought is your ticket outside of Rain, you want to not Mega Evolve for almost as long as possible, because as soon as you Mega Evolve, you know the Politoed's coming in and you're literally raining your parade. So if you're Patrick, maybe you can consider going for a non-Mega Evolve Heat Wave or something like that, maybe just to get some pressure going and to maintain his ability to put the pressure on Politoed. So, I mean, a bit of a crazy play, but, you know, it's Game 3, you know, there's money on the line. Who knows?
Gotta make big plays.
Seems like Patrick doesn't like my play. He's going to Mega Evolve his Charizard. I get it. Fair enough. Charizard is going to flap its wings and invoke the Drought ability, which is going to make its fire moves hurt a heck of a lot. Golden Girl the Gardevoir is also going to Mega Evolve. So, alright, we do see that the Charizard is faster than Gardevoir, or at least maybe a speed tie. So it looks like both of them are going to try to knock each other around this turn. Mungus is going to Rage Powder. I think that's pretty safe, and I don't disagree with that. And we're going to see, yep, the Psychic from Collin. Excellent decision to not Thunderbolt or Volt Switch there. And he's going to bust that Pyapa Berry and hit a Mungus for a good sizable chunk of damage.
We see the Overheat. The Overheat does connect. Who does the target? Let's see. Nicely done.
We'll see if he gets the KO this time. Yeah.
So Patrick basically making the safest play possible, though one thing I feared there was a potential Protect from Gardevoir and a Psychic, because if you were able to do that, you know, the thing here is Collin has to lock himself into one of two attacks, right? So, like, you have to put yourself into Thunderbolt or Psychic. But, wow, that was a really great turn once again, I think, for Patrick, especially if he has a Sylveon in the back. Because if he has Sylveon, you can switch out the Charizard here, though I'm not sure if that's the best play because you open yourself to crits and whatnot. But the thing is, I think it was just a good knockout there onto the Gardevoir. I presume, like, Collin was going for the double Psychic onto the Mungus. And if Patrick predicted that, he actually could have just went for a Spore onto Thundurus. But he made the safest play possible. He knew that worst comes to worst, Gardevoir protects, Thundurus goes for a Psychic, but locks himself into Psychic. But I think if Collin went for that Protect the first turn with Gardevoir, he would have had the free option to switch into Politoed. But of course, he didn't know whether Patrick would Mega Evolve or not. So I don't know, it's a really interesting turn, but I think Patrick definitely got the better of it. However, it does mean a free switch into Lorraine for Collin.
Right. So once again, he goes all out. He tries as hard as he can to get the knockout in the Gardevoir, and he succeeds. But he puts himself in a little bit of a disadvantageous position, just as he's currently losing the local weather war. I guess I want to think of it. Like, I don't think he's going to lose it the battle necessarily. But right now, he's at the losing end of a weather war. I think he'll be able to safely maneuver around that. So I think it's probably a good switch by him. And we're going to see precisely what he seems to do to get around that. The Charizard is going to swap out the Sylveon, who should be okay taking a few special moves. Oh, very smart by Collin. He's also going to switch out the Politoed to fight the Charizard another day, and a Escavalier is going to come in. Marvelous switch. Escavalier threatens both these Pokemon perfectly.
Yeah, I'm liking that play on both ends here. Let's see if Collin predicted this and went for the Psychic. Okay, no. That would have been... I think if you're Collin here, though, you can't go. That's, like, way too risky of a play. And now this is even more interesting to me. I mean, you could actually switch the Amoonguss out into Charizard, and that would set up the Sun once again, and then go for a Hyper Voice, or you could just stay in with the Amoonguss. I mean, it might be in Psychic KO range at this point, and I think probably the thing that I'd be most scared of right now if I'm Patrick is if Psychic knocks out Amoonguss, Ironhead can also knock out the Sylveon. That'd be 2 knockouts immediately. I do feel like Patrick has a better position, especially because he hasn't lost the Pokemon yet. Like, that first turn of offense was huge, and right now he's ahead. But we've seen Collin come back from these holes earlier on, so it's going to be a really close one. I do think that Patrick is, however, currently in a better position, and he just needs to make safer plays and not, mess up, I'd say. Or, I mean, I think it's also good that Game 2 at least took away, like, he knows a Rage Powder doesn't redirect away from that Escavalier, so could be important. And he is actually going to switch out that Amoonguss.
We're going to see the Amoonguss switch out into the Charizard. That makes perfect sense to me, but let's see if Collin, with his slower Escavalier, maybe decides to switch into Politoed. That'd be another brilliant play out of him, but we'll see what happens. No, we're going to see the Psychic on the Charizard. That's going to do a nice, healthy chunk of damage, but not...
there it is!
It's going to Hyper Beam like it's 1998. That is going to comfortably knock out that Thunderous, whose health bar evaporates. Thunderous pieces out. We're going to see a little bit of Life Orb recoil onto that Sylveon, and we're going to see the Iron Head from the Escavalier onto the Sylveon. So they're going to trade KOs this turn. Not sure who gets the better of that. I think maybe if I'm Collin, I'm happy that I get to switch in Politoed now and get my Rain back up, but yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I think right now, if I'm Patrick, I'm feeling really good, actually, because you can switch Charizard out, bring in Amoonguss for free. I mean, Amoonguss is probably going to... Oh, he's actually going to switch into Dragalge. I think Amoonguss might have been a better switch in, personally, because what you can do is protect and switch out the Dragalge, or protect and switch out the Charizard to the Dragalge, and then the following turn, actually, I think that would have ensured him the win, because if you were to see the double target onto the Charizard slot, then he gets a free switch and back into the Charizard. If he doesn't, then the following turn, you can switch Amoonguss out to Charizard Y and go for the Hidden Power Fire. So, once again, Patrick making somewhat of a questionable decision, but I don't know. Let's see if it actually makes a difference in this one.
Yeah, we're going to see Charizard swap out to try to win the Weather War into Amoonguss. Escavalier is going to protect, and Politoed is going to go for a Scald. Let's see who he targets. Into the Amoonguss, it's going to do very little, I'm afraid. And we're going to see Dragalge go for the Draco Meteor. Ooh, a crucial misstep from Collin. Let's see how much this adaptability Draco Meteor does. I've literally actually no idea because I've never seen a Dragalge Draco Meteor. Oh my goodness, did that knock out that Politoed?
I don't... Oh, okay, just
wow.
a sliver.
Hangs on. With, like, single-digit HP. Politoed's going to survive. Wow, what a crazy... Wow, I didn't know Dragalge could do that. But now I feel that Collin's really on the back foot here. Unless he really has something cooking, I'm not sure if he can weasel his way out of this one.
Yeah, I really don't think it's really not the game this time around. I think Patrick had played that one really, really well. And, it's nice to see he didn't let game 2 get to him because he was really, really close to winning it. And I know for a lot of players, when you come that close, but you just fall short and you're like that one turn away, it can really frustrate you. But Patrick not letting that affect him at all. I think he made really good plays the entire game, especially that first turn. And that first turn, I think, really could have decided the match immediately because you'd imagine how different it would have played out if Gardevoir went for a Protect that first turn, and then the following turn, Thunderous maybe switched out into Politoed to, win the Weather War. So I think one reason why Patrick has really been able to take control of this one was just picking up the KO into Gardevoir immediately. And, Collin is a player that likes to play very, very offensively, often going for those double targets, ignoring the potential attacks and KOs, as we saw in the end of Game 2 and in Game 3, just did not pay out for him this time around. And I feel like losing that Gardevoir just, it's just a loss of too much momentum because Charizard and Sylveon just have so much pressure side by side. And I think right now, if you're Patrick, you've basically got this locked up. You can just protect Amoonguss, go for the Draco onto Politoed, but he's going to smartly protect here.
Right, Collin's going to protect here to shield himself from, I guess, another Draco Meteor, which is going to not connect. Amoonguss going to Gig Drain Politoed, also going to protect. Ooh, Amoonguss Mega Horn. I don't know if that would have saved Collin, but, that's smart. That hurts a little bit. Maybe just for our fans tuning in who maybe don't have the same game sense we do, Aaron. What's pretty much happening here, guys, is Patrick knows that as soon as he switches in Charizard, he wins the Weather War, and all he has to do is press the Heat Wave button. Assuming he doesn't miss, he wins. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to let one of his Pokemon just get KO'd rather than switching it in because he doesn't want to get crit or something on the switch. So he's just waiting around until one of his Pokemon gets KO'd. Collin's going to Ice Beam Amoonguss for, a little bit. But he's going to go down with Draco Meteor this turn from our pesky friend, Jarl Giggly. Special attack is once again going to get harshly lowered. Unless the Cavalier has Explosion or something, I don't know if they can do anything here. Amoonguss is going to Giga Drain. It's going to get Quad Resisted by Cavalier. It'll do precisely 3 damage. Amoonguss is going to get precisely 1 HP back. And we're going to see a Drill Run with Cavalier under the Galge, which is going to pick up the KO, but I think the Charizard's going to come in, and that's going to be the end of that.
Yeah, very nicely played on Patrick's end here. That's not to take away any credit, obviously, from Collin, who is one of the best players in the world, but I don't think many people saw Patrick pulling this upset off. I think he mentioned, 93% of people predicted Collin to win this one, and, that makes sense. He's the favorite, but the thing is, this is Pokemon. This is VGC. Upsets happen all the time.
All the time.
Players can easily take players from the best sets. Sets from the best players in the world, and Patrick's going to end this one up with a Heat Wave, connecting with that Escavalier and taking this set 2-1. So, really, really fun set to watch here, actually, and I'm really happy for Patrick. I think he's a player that often lets things get to him, especially at real-life tournaments, and I think this is a big win for him, especially for his confidence. Beating Collin is no joke. Collin is one of the best guys, one of the best players in the world, and I feel like Patrick was one step ahead of him for the majority of this, for this set, really. So I'm sure Patrick's got to be feeling pretty good, and I'm excited to see how his future rounds go, because it was really exciting here.
Yeah, what I would say is, like in Pokemon, we have different types of wins. We have ones that you win, and we have ones that you win. I'm doing air quotes here. Just Pokemon's game where sometimes that happens. I think Patrick won. He did the first one. I think he was ahead of Collin, and he pretty much did everything he had to do to win that game. So, I mean, big ups to Patrick. He is asking us if we were willing to interview